Morning. Not yet awake, but I've got my coffee, so we're good. Do you know that thing where you like get up weirdly early and then go back to sleep, and then when you wake up again, it's just like you've gotten some sort of evil sleep that has not refreshed you?
It's in fact counterproductive and you have brain fog because your
Yeah, it's like
brain is like stuck in between REM and
mm,
whatever. Yes, yes. Well, the good news is that like we're recording this and I can cut out whatever whatever
love that.
whatever
Very cinematic.
shenanigan. Like if you're ever like just
Mm.
let me start over.
Yeah,
I can do that for you. I got you. Well, first of all, thank you for talking to me.
yeah, no problem.
When Tor reached out, I was
Mm.
like, Nebula award-winning author. Okay, let's go. Let's just start with your journey to here.
How did we get here? Okay, so should I start like the beginning? Should I be like, I was 12 years old and I loved getting praise from teachers because that's truly how it began.
I mean, whatever floats your boat. I was more of thinking career-wise, but
Mhm.
if you think that there's important things that happened in your infancy that we need to know about, I say include them.
Okay, so I started writing like science fiction and fantasy in basically end of college, beginning of law school. And before that, I had been a creative writing major and also a fine arts major because, I was truly committed to being unemployed. Just kidding. I was committed to going to grad school. So I knew that my undergrad degree didn't matter as much as my grades in undergrad did. And I was like, I want to do the things that I want to do.
Yeah.
Shockingly, now I'm using my creative writing degree more than my law degree. So, oh, how the tables turn. But I started writing science fiction and fantasy after doing basically my entire creative writing thesis is like literary short fiction. And the pivot to science fiction and fantasy is really just because that's what I loved reading. And I was like, wait a minute, if that's what I love reading, that's what I should be writing. I need to be doing something so that I don't go insane in law school. And so I started writing short fiction. The first story that I wrote was called Homecoming is Just Another Word for the Sublimation of the Self, which is what my book, Sublimation, is based on, because I got to the end of that short story and like I started thinking, wait a minute, this is something that I feel like could be expanded. And also the main character is nuts and she would not let things lie where they ended. But then basically what goes on is that over the course of my like law school and like legal career, I write a lot of short fiction. I also write a separate novel and I get an agent and all of that stuff. And this is all very much a side project to my quest of pass the bar exam, get a job, become a lawyer.
Yeah.
All of those things that are happening. But I am an outlier in that I think short fiction doesn't necessarily lead to having a like novel writing career for most people. But
Mhm.
for me, what happened is basically, have you read The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas by Ursula K. Le Guin?
Mm-mm.
Okay. So it's a really good short story. It's by Ursula K. Le Guin, of course it
Yes.
is, but
Yeah.
there is a long tradition of science fiction and fantasy writers writing like riffs on that story because it is basically about a fucked up trolley problem and everyone likes to write their version of it to some degree. So I wrote one called Why Don't We Just Kill the Kid in the Omelas Hole, which um, I thought was four people were going to read because I had written it for like four people in a Discord server more than I wrote it for a greater audience. It explodes on like author social media, and then basically editors start asking, "Do you have a book?" And my agent is like, "Isabel, you're not done with Sublimation, but you're pretty close. We're going to send that to everyone." And then that goes to like a six house auction, and this is happening when I am at the law firm working on this horrible, like just this terrible restructuring. There's a man called like Mr. Papermaster on the other side of this deal. So I'm dealing with Mr. Paper, that's his actual human name. I'm dealing with that. It's the week of my birthday. And also also the week of my agent's birthday. And also we are doing this auction. And I'm losing my mind. Anyway, in the end, Tor wins, and I'm very happy with where I ended up. And now I owe them three books. Well, technically, I've given them one book. I owe them two books.
Are the two books in the same world or are they totally different? Just
Totally different. So
cool.
it, I think publishers have pivoted more from like asking people for a series, especially debut authors, to
Yeah.
asking them for individual novels, just because if the first one, um, like, if the first one flops, then it's like, okay, well, we can pivot.
Yeah.
So the second novel, which I'm woefully behind on right now, is basically Piranesi meets the Backrooms, and it is about a guy whose girlfriend has been at the mall for too long, and he needs to go and get her.
I love it. You say that you're behind on your second book when Sublimation is out, what, in a couple, not yet, couple weeks?
Couple weeks. I don't know when this is going to air, but at this moment, it is like 11 days from now. So I'm super normal about it. I'm being so normal about it. Should I tell people what the concept of the book is before we like do that?
Yeah.
Or is that
Yeah,
important?
let's I
Yeah,
think
okay.
that we're at that point for
We're
sure.
at that
Yes.
point. Okay.
Yeah.
So Sublimation is set in a universe where when you cross a border, you split into two. One person goes to the new country and the other stays in home country. If they ever meet again and physically touch, they turn back into one person with both sets of memories. So the story follows Rose Soyoung Kang, who goes back from New York to South Korea for her grandfather's funeral. Her other self is waiting, and her other self would love to reintegrate. And Rose very much does not want to. So that is the first third of the book, and then it gets much more interesting. Let me put it that way from there. I would say that it's like if you like character study and if you like complicated weird romance stuff and if you like really if you like it's a whole situation and if you like thinking about how your life would have gone differently, if you want to think about a lot of the stuff going on in our world through the lens of another one, this is a good book for you. If you're going to read one science fiction novel, you should read mine because I'm biased, but yeah.
I mean, it is very timely, right? Because immigration is massive, so is the discussion about citizenship. There are a lot of questions asked in the book, and
Hmm.
I like that there aren't neat and tidy answers because
Hmm.
each POV character has a different take and a different
Hmm.
perspective. Okay, so for the audience, we
Hmm.
have So Young Rose, the
Hmm.
the instances. Maybe we should talk
Hmm.
about instancing.
Hmm.
And then we have YJ Eugen,
Hmm.
and they are instances, and there
Hmm.
are POVs of everyone.
Hmm.
And then also the POVs switch from second person at one point
Hmm.
to third person at one point, which is wild and really, really cool. What exactly is instancing and
Hmm.
who is who?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so instancing is the process by which you split into two people when you cross that border. An instance is a version of that person in whatever country it is. So both people are instances, and I borrowed this term from like computer science.
Oh,
So our four instances are so first pair, Rose and Soyoung. Rose and Soyoung split when they were 10 when their mom got a job in Korea. And so Rose is the American instance. She lives in New York. She has a job working in something in software. It's not important. And she's not super in touch with her Korean side of the family. Soyoung, on the other hand, is the version of Rose that had to stay in Korea. And basically, she has like a fiance and she has like a life in Korea, and she really wants to know what Rose got up to. Um, and that is the central tension between Rose and Soyoung at the beginning of the novel. Then flip flip it the other way, you've got YJ and Eugen. So YJ and Eugen are instances who split when they were, I want to say it was 20, when they were 20, when they were um, doing a foreign exchange program in New York. And so there's Eugen, who is in Korea, and he is waiting for YJ to figure out quote unquote dual citizenship, which means a different thing in their world than it does in ours.
yep.
And he is frustrated by the fact that his life seems like it's not going anywhere, but he's also less stressed than YJ is. YJ is very stressed. YJ is in New York working as a basically a corporate executive, and he has been put in charge of this project that was this like mysterious technology around instancing. And I'm not going to spoil what this is about because that's really where the latter half of the book is involved in. But basically, YJ is under a lot of pressure because his citizenship status is tied to his job. And then also, his childhood friend from Korea is now reaching out to him, and she wants something for him. And this is Soyoung Rose. So there's a complicated set of relationships between them because Rose has not talked to YJ or Eugen since she was 10. Soyoung and Eugen are friends in Korea and they are basically besties. And then YJ has not talked to Soyoung since he was 17. And there was well, not 17, maybe like 19 or something like that. But and YJ did ask Soyoung out at some YJ Eugen did ask Soyoung Rose out at some point when they were teenagers, and it went terribly badly.
Yeah.
And now everyone is in their late 20s, and they all have either no relationship or have moved past and are just regular friends. Obviously, this is the perfect place to start a romance.
Obviously, obviously. Which version do we like? Do we like both versions? Gets messy and delicious. Question. In
Hmm.
the book, intention was mentioned as an aspect of instancing.
Hmm.
Can you
Yeah.
explain how could someone cross a border and not instance?
Mm. So if you're going on vacation or if you're just going for something that's supposed to be temporary, you're not going to instance because it is about the feeling of knowing that you are leaving for real, for like permanently. If you are like leaving somewhere and like if for example, if you take a temporary job in another country, but you know at the end of your like 6 months contract, you will be back where you normally live. You're not going to instance. But if you live there for like 6 months and now you really like the other country and you secretly see yourself as living there, you could see the way that the rest of your life would go there. You fall in love with someone there and now you're planning to stay. Then when you cross the border back to the first place you lived, you're going to instance. So it is about human desire and the messiness of human desire, especially when like human desire is like very much delineated by like um borders and like governments and like if you want to live somewhere, that doesn't necessarily mean you can. It depends on if like, if the powers that be will let you.
Let's talk about POV and your use of
Mm.
it in the book.
Ooh, yeah, okay.
If we can, what maybe let me just ask, what role does POV play
Mm.
in your writing?
I love using POV as a tool to create a specific effect in the reader's mind. So the second person, okay, I guess in this novel, specifically the second person is used for instances and the third person is used for recombined people. Um, what this does is the second person is something we don't really see outside of video games or like really like if the author is trying to do something weird. And the effect that it has on the reader is that usually if you hear that you are doing this, then the reader is like, I'm not doing that. But it feels more intimate than the third person does, and it allows you more access into the characters like thought space. And basically what I was trying to do is create sort of like an alienated intimacy for the reader where they feel like this is like weird, but I'm getting a lot out of it. And then it shifts back to third person because with both people's perspectives, now you're getting a more balanced view on the whole situation. And it's not supposed to read with that sort of friction anymore. I was sort of surprised that Tor let me do this and that my editor was down with it, but my editor also like edits like the lock tomb. So like I was kind of like, okay,
Yeah,
okay. And I would say that if you're watching this and you liked Harrow the Ninth, then the second person in this will work for you. And if you didn't, I'm sorry, just try it anyway. I promise it's good.
yeah. I'm a huge fan of Locked Tomb, so it makes sense, even though I'm typically in worlds with dragons and necromancy and weird,
Mm,
weird magic. The strangeness of the POV was very, very engaging and interesting to
mm.
me. So that was one of the things that drew me in quickest, actually. I really, really
Nice.
enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Nailed it.
Hell yeah.
Excellent. I really enjoyed the way you incorporate alternative history with alternative folklore. Uh,
Hmm.
how did you decide what stories to weave together? What came first? Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, okay. So basically every arc of this book is also like paired with a alternate history piece of mythology or like
Religious
piece of
text.
like religious
Yeah.
text. Yeah, religious text or like folktale. And basically my thought process when picking things were I wanted to pick things that kind of spanned the Western canon, but also things that would read as like Korean or would read like part of like the Eastern canon. For example, like Azilang is like a very, very like, it is a prominent Korean like folk song that's like really relevant to the culture. As seen by the BTS album.
Yeah.
But I also wanted the things that would be familiar to the reader because part of what I wanted to do by including this, like all of this like text was to make it feel like instancing is part of their world and that it has changed the way that people see stories and the way that stories were created. And like in the same way that like, and that it is a fact of the world, like the moon or the stars or like love or death is a fact of our world. Um, So my thought process was basically, okay, I need to find a story that fits within like that feels canonical and is also feels like kind of like folklore, like mythology, like in some cases, and also fits the arc of the book that we are in right now. Because the short story, I used the Odyssey and I used the Fisherman folktale as the two, and those were woven in simultaneously. And then when I kind of teased that apart, then I was like, okay, we need to actually like make each story fit each like section. So then other things I thought about using that I ultimately did not use
Oh
were
yeah.
like Epic of Gilgamesh, which I didn't use just because there's not enough there, even though it is like a foundational text in that it is the oldest story.
Yeah.
And it is a little bit too different from it's not something that people are super aware of the whole arc of, so it would have felt a little too quote unquote new to the reader.
Yeah.
The other was the Journeys to the West and like in Monkey King and all of that, because that would have felt like very foundational from like an Eastern sense. Felt like it would be like a bookend to the Odyssey in a way that I did not actually want it to be, and I already had like something that was a journey.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I thought about using more Greek mythology, and I was like, no, we already have the Odyssey in here. That's like enough of like that side of the Western canon. And I was very sure that I was going to use Adam and Eve because that is just, really like the idea of them instancing when they left the garden, and I felt like
Yeah.
rewriting, like basically the beginning of Genesis would really hammer home, especially in like, oh, like, within like the Western culture, like, okay, their world is different.
Yeah. The idea of being trapped in paradise
hmm
versus exiled from paradise, and which is worse, and which
hmm
is, it really did drive home for me this this tension between the instances
hmm
in the book. I thought that the relationship between YJ Eugen and So Young Rose was very, very interesting because YJ and Eugen talk,
hmm
and So Young and Rose do not.
Yeah.
Can you maybe talk a little bit about the
Yeah.
difference
So
there?
So the way that I thought saw it was that first there is an element of personality difference, which is that Rose and Soyoung, like from the beginning, are pretty reserved and are not people who want to talk about their feelings.
Okay.
And the second is that like YJ and Eugen are sort of like people who are trying to do like a little scheme occasionally,
Yeah.
or like they want to do teamwork in a way that
Yes.
like I think Soyoung and Rose like very much don't. But there's also like the really big difference because I modeled their stories on two very common immigrant narratives. The um person who comes to the States because their parents get a job, and then the other who like comes during college because they want to do something. And the difference between like instancing when you're 10 and then not talking to your other self because the adults in your life want to have a clean break, and there was kind of like an altercation in your family, and now this is basically a part of your family you don't talk to, and then reconnecting them with them as an adult is like very different psychologically than I am 20 years old and I got off the plane, and there's another version of me in Korea right now who is just calling me. And so they feel close. YJ and Eugen have only recently begun to see themselves as separate people, as opposed to
Oh,
somebody who is going to eventually be one person or is like acting in unison, if that makes sense. But they have
yeah.
20 years of the same memories, so they kind of feel like they can predict each other more, and they feel like they are on the same team. And that is something that is like, it helps them have a relationship, but it also makes it harder for them to talk with each other about things where they are no longer aligned, where that is something that neither of them has really like dealt with in their life before, because it's like, okay, um, I no longer want this thing that my other self wanted me to do, and I used to want to do this, and I told him that I would do this, and he has been planning for this for the last 10 years. Am I ruining his life if I do what I want?
The way that you write the dialogue between them also is fascinating. People just have to read it in order to access the dialogue and the way that the dialogue shifts. And it's great. You don't answer the question in the book. So, I
Mm,
mean, I don't know if you can answer the
mm,
question. But the grandfather is the catalyst for
mm,
so many things. Can you talk a little bit about the house? And
mm.
if not what was going through his mind, maybe just what happened?
The grandfather basically, so the plot kicks off essentially with the grandfather giving Rose a bunch of like unwanted inheritances and Soyoung a unwanted like sort of wanted like directive. And what I wanted to do there was like very much like the phenomenon of like an elderly relative gives you objects that you don't need and you're not sure why this happened, but
Yeah.
also you feel attached to it because it is something from your childhood, but the way that you felt about things as a kid and the way that the adults in your life saw the way that you felt about things is different than you feel about them as an adult. So my thought was the grandfather, he was too proud to do any of this when he was alive because he had argued with his daughter and he had had a bad enough argument with his daughter, and everyone in that family was too stubborn to actually ever fix this. But also he had felt like his actions and his daughter's actions had led to kind of a rift for his granddaughters. And part of making them deal with this and giving them those directives was him trying to put them in proximity and force them to interact with each other. He wanted Rose to come back to Korea but he was also not like, he wasn't sure if that would happen. And he also he wanted them to interact and he wanted to like open that door.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it is never spoken because he's dead and he did
Yeah.
never put that down.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you mentioned, I mean, the word rift, right? It's so poignant in so many aspects of the story. Maybe summarize what the book is about without saying plot.
The book is about the experience of being a foreigner and also the experience of being alienated and how it is hard to communicate, but it is also a universal experience. And it is also about the way that borders shape the way that we move through the world and the way we see each other psychologically. And also whether it is good to have information and more choices and if these choices may or may not be negative versus less information, but an easier life.
If there's one thing that you hope a reader takes away from the experience of reading the book, what would
Mhm.
you like them to take away?
Oh God, this is so silly, but I wrote the short story and I wrote the novel partially with the goal of making the reader feel very weird about the trajectory of their life. So I want you to go read this book and then I want you to have a conversation with other people in your life about like decisions you could have made differently.
Oh my gosh. Well, and it got picked up for film adaptation by Universal. So what's that like?
Oh yeah, okay. So that was also crazy because it got picked up like basically months, like I don't remember if it was like a month after or a couple of weeks after the got picked up by a publisher. But basically what happened is the deal was so big that film scouts were interested in what was going on. And there's a whole Deadline article about it. It's the whole thing. Very weird year in that year. But yeah, so basically what it meant is that I talked with a couple of different studios about what their vision of what sublimation on the screen would look like. And then me and my agent and my lawyer talked about who we thought was best and also like, in the way that these things go, like who was offering like, the most comprehensive package. And anyway, long story short, it is optioned by Universal. Hopefully, fingers crossed, something happens because optioning does not mean that the thing actually gets made. But
Yeah.
if it gets made, I am attached as an executive producer. And so far, my involvement has been limited to reading a lot of very cool spec scripts by potential showrunners. So that's been fun. But it's also like one of those things where I'm crossing my fingers. I've never worked in Hollywood before. We've
Yeah.
set up a couple of other projects, which is cool, but all of them are early stage enough that I'm like, option money is nice to have. I would love to see something on TV. However, putting a film together is a big group project that requires financing in a way that books don't. So I'm very
Yeah.
much like, let the chips fall where they may.
It
I'm
would
just
be
happy to be here.
it would be cool. It would be really cool if. So you said showrunner. So we're thinking more
Mhm.
of like limited TV series rather than
Yes.
like movie.
It was picked up for like a TV deal, not a movie deal. And that was actually an interesting question that me and my agent talked about like early on in trying to figure out where to position it because and position this and also other like things we've tried to sell and or have sold where
Yeah.
selling things for movies versus for selling things for film versus television is um different because of the two constraints that I've seen and like the two opportunities are first like with a television series there people usually want there to be more story so it
Yeah.
there ends up being more changes to something that is like a short story or a novel or something like that because just unless the novel is like chunky enough that you could break it up into multiple seasons then it's like okay what happens next and in
Right.
Sublimation's case we talked about a couple of different routes that this could go which I'm not going to get into because they're all super hypothetical
Uh-huh.
but with a movie, then what you're looking at is like, okay, so you want something that's self-contained. And something that surprised me a ton is that um, people have said that basically a short story is about the perfect length to sell for a movie because that's about the amount of plot that you want. So like
Yeah.
it's like why Arrival is such a good movie because that's based on like a Ted Chiang short story. Um and then the other thing is that like there's a really interesting like budgetary difference between TV and film and
Yeah.
therefore what people want to make for each thing to make it look better or like to make sure it looks good, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that was all pretty interesting and Sublimation ended up going for like TV, which I was happy with just because there's more space in a limited series to stretch out everybody's arc and like kind of flesh out more secondary characters. And also, at the end of Sublimation, we leave everyone in a very strange place. And
Yes.
I would love to either um, be like see what the showrunner has to come up with, or be in that writer's room to be like, so how are we going to do this, guys?
Sublimation sort of originated as this short story and then it
Mhm,
expanded into a novel.
mhm,
And now we're talking about expanding again.
mhm.
You're not finished with the story in your head, are you? Or
Uh, I've told everyone there isn't going to be a sequel, and nobody
okay.
believes me, so that's where I'm at as a
Okay.
person.
I mean, when I finished, I
Mhm.
I did not feel unsatisfied. I
Okay, good.
absolutely felt I didn't feel closure either, but I also
Mhm,
didn't think that that was the point, you know?
mhm,
So I would be thrilled if there was. I would be thrilled if there wasn't. I think that
mhm.
it is I loved the ending. We
Yes,
won't
I had to
spoil
rewrite
it
it
for
four
everybody.
times.
You what?
I rewrote it four times. This is what happens with every book I write, is that I have to rewrite the beginning and the ending between three to four times, and it drives me crazy because um, it doesn't matter if I've written an outline or not. It's just gonna happen.
I love that. I love that because these characters felt very real and
Mhm,
the whole concept of the book is about choice and the
mhm,
impact of choice. So it makes sense that there are infinite endings to a story. Out of curiosity, so the short story that you originally wrote, you
mhm.
said that the main character was sort of messy. Is the main character so young?
Yeah, the main character is Rose, and you only see things from Rose's perspective. So then Soyoung's perspective gets added for the rest added for like the novel, and so does YJ and Eugen's because they don't exist in a short story because four people and four perspectives is way too
Oh
many
yeah.
to put into like 6,000 words.
But do you have any tour stops that you're
Yes, I
doing?
do. Yeah. So if anyone has like more questions for me or wants to be like, hey, Isabel, what the hell was that answer? That was
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
I am okay. So digitally, I'm doing an AMA on r/fantasy on June 2nd. So truly
Cool.
the book will be out and I will be at my computer. And then Tor has a list of my tour dates, which is like I'm going to be in New Jersey, New York like twice, Boston, Connecticut, and Pittsburgh. So go check out Macmillan, like look at like Macmillan's page for like tours and then
I will
find my
link,
name.
I'll link it in the
Thank God.
description
Thank
of
God. I was
the
describing this terribly.
I
But
got
like
you.
yeah, link below and come say hi.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I hope you have a
Thank you.
great rest of your day and
You too.
morning, and my iced
Mhm.
coffee is now half water.
I am almost done with this one. And thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
I love picking things apart, and I feel very privileged that I get to just ask questions about the books I read from the people who wrote them. So
Honestly, it sounds like a delightful like job. Like I would
it
love to do
is.
that.
Well, I'm glad that we both get to sort of live our best lives,
Mhm.
crushing it. And yeah, are you still working in law?
I quit my job like earlier, like last year, a little bit before that,
Okay.
and if the book doesn't do well, I will be going back to the law firm. So that is the trajectory of my life. We'll see
So
how
we
it
need
goes.
to save you.
Exactly. Like, please buy the book so I don't have to go be a leveraged finance attorney again. Because I like writing books more than I like writing contracts,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
just a
for
little
sure.
bit.
I would be surprised if this did not do very, very well. And I really, really do hope that we get the film adaptation because I cannot imagine all of these different character POVs
Mhm.
coming and going and the different actors and
It would be so fun. It would be so
it
cool
would
to
be so
watch.
fun. It would be so fun, Universal. Well, I hope you have a great day. And yeah, thank you again for taking the time to talk to me.
You too. Thanks for having me. And this, yeah, this was great.
Bye.